Hard way learned here. Got to make a video today that I really didn't want to make, but here I am. I'm up at the homestead property today. It's not bad news or anything like that. We're not getting rid of it. We're in this for the long haul, but I had to file a lawsuit. And I'm not happy about that. I tried really hard to come to a reasonable solution with a neighbor, and looks like we're gonna end up going to court. Stick with me, I'll show you what's going on. So a little background. Our property that we plan to build on, we have not built anything on it yet. We've done some pre-permitting submittals, that sort of thing, but we have not done any actual construction up here. What we are facing is a major timber trespass. My neighbor decided to clear cut his property, which is totally within his right, but he cut deep into our property. And I'll show some aerial photography and some drone footage here. We discovered this. We were up here. A friend of mine, shout out to Mike, brought his Mavic drone up here and was flying it around, and we'd overflown sort of where what we thought was the west property line, and got a little shock that the property line was not observed when the neighbor did his logging. We reached out to the neighbor. We know who it is, and he said, oh, it couldn't have been. And eventually he actually admitted that he had cut the trees. There's lawyers involved, so I'm not gonna go too deep into all that, but there was an admission. He did not have a survey conducted when he did the logging, so that's not a good idea. When you do logging, you need to know exactly where your lines are, and he didn't do that. With my GPS and with Onyx maps and the county's GIS website and the detailed topographical maps that are in the GIS, I could find the corner of our property pretty easily, and I could visually shoot a bearing to the corner pin, from corner pin to corner pin. There's a little rise in between, so you have to kind of climb up, but we can get the idea. I know I'm not a surveyor, but it was not that difficult. My GPS took me right to the corner post that already existed and was already flagged, and logging had happened right up to that corner. However, the logging happened on our side of the property line, not as much on the neighbor's side at the back corner. And I don't have a perfect measurement of how far into the property they cut, but it's something like 150 to 200 feet of trees that they cut. I've counted the rings on a number of these stumps, and some of them are over 100 years old. This would have been the view from the west side of our house. Our plan to build up here would have basically use the topography, get to the kind of the higher point on the property. These large cedar trees would have created a buffer for us where we wouldn't see the neighbor's clear cut. We wouldn't have cared. But they're gone. And we went back and forth with them, with our attorneys, with their attorneys for quite a while. We also had a forestry consulting company perform what's called a stump cruise. They went through and measured and counted every stump, comparing to the property boundaries, and provided us values. They went out to the mills where the neighbor actually sold the logs and got the pricing from their sales, and created a very detailed analysis. They measured trees in the area that were still standing, so that they could measure the taper and calculate the exact board feet. When you have this many trees, you're dealing with a sample size large enough that you can calculate how many board feet within a very close percentage of what would have had to have been accurate. Marketable trees in that stump cruise was 350 marketable trees. There were a handful of non-marketable snag type trees or too small to be marketable, but that were also cut. So I'm going to take you into that area right now. This is the trail we've cut in to get back into this area. It's not the steepest, but it's not flat. And it's just brushy enough right now that I'm still getting hung up in little blackberry vines. But now it's passable. When we bought the property, this trail was not passable. We're at about the edge of where the cutting took place. There's a cedar tree here that was not cut, but there are stumps right in this area of trees that were cut in this cutting, and we'll find some of those here. All the ground you see here is our property. All the stumps you will see with blue numbers on them were our trees. Looks like in the storms this winter, there's an alder right in front of me here that's snapped off in the wind. That's not from logging, that's windfall. Stumps there. We'll go find some of the blue marked stumps. My stump crews guys painted blue numbers on the stumps, and I'm hoping that they're still visible. Here's one of our stumps. The numbers have faded, but 3, 5, and then I'm not sure what the third number is. There were 357 marked stumps. Like I said, a handful of them were, like 7 of them were non-marketable. This is an old growth cedar. Show my hand as we'll get scale that way, right? That's 3.5 foot diameter. Now you might be like, well, where's your property line? Hard way? The corner of the property is at the tree line over there, and we'll go find that line. I'll see if I can put a little animation pointing towards it. It's kind of down over the hill over there. It's not the easiest to see because the blue has faded somewhat. I'll find the pictures from when the blue was fresh. But you can see all these large stumps. Every single one of these large stumps was part of this timber trespass. I'm still not even to the corner of the property yet. I'm kind of walking along the edge of their cutting boundary, which is here. And back there, way back there, you can see a no trespass sign. That's a neighbor's sign. The property line's actually a little further than that, neighbor. Here's one of their slash piles. You can see here's another stump. This one's not nearly as big, but it's also a cedar. So in the 330 series of the trees that were cut, there's stumps over there. You can see 326 on that stump over there, 331 on that stump right there. Okay, you see their cutting boundary over there, right? Well, here's a shocking thing for you. That's my property line, and we're on my property right now. They cut the trees on our side, but didn't cut the trees on their side. Now the line, they didn't stick to the line either. They did cut trees on their side, but up here in the corner, they only cut the trees on our side, which is very strange to me. Still on our property, still stumps to be had. You can see the blue marks on some of those, still on our side. Still our stumps over here. The hill kind of rolls over here. So anywhere you see blue numbers, those are the trees that our stump crews looked at. And the property line comes right through this stand. You can see here trees that are marked, and then a stump over there. That one's marked. Yeah, so these trees are marked, and then that ribbon, the pink one, marks their cutting boundary. The orange one I believe is the one my stump cruise guys put up as they did a sight line down to the north corner. And the south corner is back here. There was a stake here when the logging happened. We've since had it surveyed, so they've added a rebar stake, or they've marked it with ribbons and all kinds of stuff here. So it's a boulder with a rebar stake, and multiple surveyors have confirmed. We got 2 different surveyors within a couple feet marking that out. This is the neighbor's property, the hillside. Standing about as close as I can get to the corner and still show you a view. Everything you see in here, in this 90 degrees, is my property. I'm going to sweep real slow, 90 degrees. This is facing about east, northeast, northish. We'll hike up to the rise there and we'll look down over the carnage. Looking back where we just were, back at the corner, you can see the ribbons hanging there on either side of where the corner is. Over here on the tree, that orange ribbon we looked at a second ago, neighbor's trees. And here's the view. This camera angle, I'm pointed roughly toward the north corner of our property. It's 1,300 feet in that direction. Everything on the right side of your screen is our property. The property line shoots right through this gap right here. And you can see a white rock down here. It's about where the line is. And then it continues down the hill. They didn't just stick to the line. They cut up here between 150 and 200 feet inside the property line. I don't know the exact number. Well, like I said, we'll look at it on the aerial. They also went way up the hillside over here. We've measured stumps back into the tree line and counted them because they were fresh cut when this was performed. And they did it in a way that was selective and took the valuable trees and left the scraggly little ones. Looking again back up toward the corner, this is that rise we were looking over. I've drifted a little bit to the east because of the terrain. You can still see the blue on the stumps. Cut stump there, and all the blue going up the hill. Deep into the tree line up there, there's still fresh cut stumps that we measured that are 3 or more feet in diameter. There's stump number 280 inside that slash pile. We're fairly sure there are actually stumps underneath some of these slash piles that we couldn't actually get to just because of the distribution. And we didn't have, you know, a grapple in here that we could pick stuff up with like they did when they logged. They would have used some heavy equipment to move logs this big and to make these slash piles. And you can see an orange flag there with the blue stump down below it. All the way up the hill, all those stumps. Deep into our property. We're not even on the property line and we're looking into our property. My timber consultant who conducted the stump cruise for me has told me they've never seen a timber trespass like this. And they've been doing this a long time. They have long careers of working in the timber industry. They said usually when there's a dispute over some errantly cut trees, it's a couple trees on the property line, and you know, one guy writes a check to the other, or they just make a gentleman's deal and it's no big deal. This just never happens. Professionals just don't do this. Washington state law has some pretty severe remedies for intentional timber trespass. And I think, in my opinion anyway, I think you'll agree, there's no way that anyone could do this by accident. When a person like me, who's not a surveyor, not a logger, can find the corner pins super easy with a readily available cell phone app, there's just no excuse for a professional. Here again, we're on the property line. We're about at the midpoint as far as the terrain allows you to see. Can't really see our property over this little rise on the downhill side. This is all our property up the hill. You can see blue marked stumps. I wish the light was better today. We're losing the light here, but you can see the stumps and the blue marking all the way up to the ridge and beyond. That rolls over and flattens out up there, and there's even more up there. And all the way back here you can see all the blue. And about in the middle of your screen up there, the corner's back in that direction. All those stumps with the blue markings on them. Now down in that direction, down the hill, you can still see the shade of blue on stumps. Those are our stumps. The terrain does a big roll here, and so it's very hard to see. But those blue stumps are ours. And down toward the middle of your screen is where the north corner of the property is. And somewhere around the middle of the screen. The far tree line that runs perpendicular to our line of sight is where the road is, and my property comes all the way to the road there. But all of this, and it's cut way back in a big arc here on this hillside, all of this is our property. All of that. Yeah. Well, that's as far as I want to walk down the hill, because I got to walk back up it to where I parked up at our place. But you can see what we've been dealing with over the last year. Surveys, timber crews, a stump crews, lawyers, and cost, and heartbreak. It's heartbreaking that someone would do this. They made a fortune on this. This was at a very high timber price time when this was done. You guys all remember how 2x4s were $9 for an 8-foot 2x4. This isn't a small issue, a tree or two. This is hundreds of trees, hundreds of marketable trees. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars in value that was stripped off our property.